Hey, my name's Adam from Toronto, Ontario, and I subscribe to the Creative Control Patreon because I feel that at the end of the day, there are very few people in the industry who are able to consistently get the kind of quality interviews out of very diverse subjects of many creative stripes and disciplines, as Vish does pretty well on every episode of the podcast. It's a no-brainer to me that I want to support this when you factor that in to all of the bonus content you get on Patreon, and it's a listener-supported podcast, so I want to keep the great content coming. So that's why you should also support Creative Control on Patreon.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today.
Fly Pan Am is an artful rock band based in Montreal, Quebec. Formed in 1996, the band released 4 albums on Constellation Records between 1999 and 2004, and each was sonically and aesthetically different than the last. Fly Pan Am went on an extended hiatus in 2005, but quietly reconvened 11 years later to play shows. It turns out they were also working on new material, as Constellation released their excellent 5th album, C'est Ça, on September 20th, 2019. I recently had a chat with Fly Pan Am's Roger Tellier-Craig and J.S. Truchy, and we got into their history as friends and bandmates, the material conditions of 1990s Montreal that brought us the likes of their band and Godspeed You Black Emperor and Constellation Records, their new album, C'est Ça, their future plans, and more. A part of the E1 Podcast Network, with the support of listeners like you who subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, plus in-kind support from CFRU 93.3 FM, Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton. This is the 499th episode of Creative Control, featuring Roger and JS from Fly Pan Am, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hello, Fly Pan Am. How are you?
Good, yourself?
I'm well. Thank you for making time to be on this show. It's nice to have you. Now, we're going to begin by asking each of you to identify yourselves one at a time and say your name. If you want to say what you do in the band, that would be great. And then everyone listening will be like, oh, I understand what's happening right now. This is great. So why don't we start with either one of you, please?
Okay, I'm Roger. And live I play guitar, but on record it's mostly processed and transformed guitar and electronics and vocals.
Nice to meet you, Roger. Have we ever spoken before?
No, it's the first time.
It's very nice to chat with you this way. Thank you for being on this show.
Same here. Thanks for having us.
Of course. And to your right.
You are indeed right.
You are correct. So I'm JS, bass, electronics, and some synth and some vocals. I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
JS, it's nice to have you back on the show. We were just discussing that you were on the show with which project?
I think it was for Avec le soleil sortant de sa bouche.
Yes, indeed it was. That must have been 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you miss me?
I did. It was very good to see your face just now.
Briefly, yes. We've turned off the video on this internet platform so that we can just hear each other. I find it's just fine. Just the same way people are listening to us. Why should we have any advantage over my audience, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Although you are wearing a very nice sweater that no one is going to see.
You look nice too. That reminds me. I normally will ask guests when I'm speaking to them remotely where in the world they might be. So where in the world, Roger, where in the world are you today?
We're in Montreal.
You're in Montreal. Where? What? Are you at someone's home or where are you?
We're actually at JS's place in Montreal in Villeray.
Okay. And JS, you've lived in Montreal for how long?
43 years.
The whole time, right? You've never lived anywhere else. Okay.
No, it's a little bit hard for us to move away, I think, just because Montreal has a lot to offer and it's kind of cheap.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Roger, is that the same deal for you? Have you been there your whole life?
No, I've been here probably since I was like 20.
Okay.
So like 24 years.
Nice. Okay. Where were you before that?
I was on the South Shore, Saint-Basile-le-Grand, and before that, Longueuil.
Oh, so you're a native of Quebec.
Yeah.
Okay. So you haven't moved far from home.
No.
Okay.
No, it's all like, same region pretty much. It's just that, when I was 20, I hit the big city. I needed to get out of the suburbs.
Right. Of course. I never did that exactly. I visit the cities, but then I go back to the smaller towns. That's what
I can understand that.
Yeah. The doses of the cities are nice. Just I like a dose of it, and then I like to come back to sort of a more quieter place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Where are you?
Well, I'm in Guelph, Ontario.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, Guelph is still a city. I mean,
absolutely, yes. I'm not in a I'm not in like a shed on a field or anything. I'm not. Yeah, it's not a farm.
Yeah.
Actually, it is known as a bit of an agricultural hub, but it's it's a city, all those sorts of things. Which is good. I get to go to Toronto and then I get to come home, and I don't have to deal with the humanity. Do you ever get sick of Montreal? Either of you?
Oh, of course. Very much.
Right. The overwhelming humanity of it all.
Yeah, it's a bit intense.
Right.
I don't know about JS, but I do.
Right. I mean, I would love to live in the country, but yeah, Montreal can be intense sometimes, especially with all the traffic constructions we have, the construction we've had for the last few years. But
yeah, Montreal is construction city.
As is Toronto, frankly.
Shit,
oh
really?
yeah, maybe.
Wow. Yeah.
But ours, right? This year is ridiculous. Like every street is kind of blocked, so it's kind of weird. But that said, liking to be in the country, I don't know. I kind of like Montreal.
Yeah, me too.
It's has a very nice mixture of culture without being too big. Like Toronto is huge.
Yes.
Montreal is quite small.
Yes, it's true.
And you can go to the mountain. You can easily escape Montreal. It's like you bike for 20 minutes and you're out of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I love Montreal. To be honest, of the Canadian cities I've been to, it's my favorite.
Yeah, but I would like to experience just living in the country.
Yeah,
it would be nice.
I hear that. Now, it seems to me, and we're going to get into the history of Fly Pan Am in a moment. We're ostensibly going to be talking about your excellent new record, C'est Ça. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thanks.
First record in 15 years?
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's great. So we'll get into that, obviously, but it seems to me that Fly Pan Am as a sonic enterprise really does reflect more of a cityscape than maybe a country one. Does that resonate with either of you? Roger, does that make sense?
Yeah, to me that makes sense. Yeah.
Is that purposeful on some level? Is it for those who haven't heard the band yet, there's a cacophony there that reminds me of almost, rush hour traffic, if you will.
Yeah. I can totally see what you mean. There's definitely not a lot of pastoral moments in what we make. It's very intense, overdriven, and dense, and plural. Yeah, I can see a link with a cityscape. It's not intentional, though. I just think it's maybe just the way we process ideas.
JS, do you want to comment on this?
Well, I was going to say, just to go the other way around. I agree with what Roger said and your proposition. But at the same time, you could say the same about nature because nature can be so chaotic and unpredictable.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's something that Roger and I talked a lot about when we were talking about composition, not necessarily for Fly Pan Am, but just even for our solo stuff, just how nature can be so violent or so chaotic, so unpredictable, like a tornado, and I like that aspect just only because nature is not how do you say that? Like it doesn't have the connotation of
of being intense or dense or
it just is.
Oh yeah.
Like it's
It's
not
more
violent. Yeah, like there's no intent. Like it's not. It's
I would argue and not argue with you, but I would agree with you, I should say, by suggesting that I find the stillness in nature to be just as overwhelming as the cacophony of city life, because it's sort of overwhelming. The isolation can be overwhelming as well if you take a moment to escape the city and just delve into a forest, or if you go camping or whatnot. There's a different kind of alienation there, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there is. And also, like, I was talking more about the sounds, right? Like, so like if you're in nature, depending which month, but like if you go out to the country, then you could be surrounded by like hundreds of crickets that are doing just this insane.
It's intense and beautiful.
Yeah, polyrhythmic cacophony around you, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I agree with you. Like at the same time, it can be like the opposite, but like also overwhelming. But like the sound aspect of nature can be like, it'll be different than city, but it can be just as
well. It's a different scale, I think.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like like you might think that nature is still, but if you start focusing and you start like approaching like a tree, you get close to it, you see like an ant farm somewhere, like you realize there's a lot of density in the ecosystem. It's just not as apparent because it's on a smaller scale, so it doesn't take as much space because we're bigger, Yeah,
there's as much industry going on in the forest as there is.
That's it. Yeah.
Just very different.
It's very different, yeah.
This sort of speaks to some of my reading of. There's a few songs on this new album that have lyrics. I feel like they're almost presented as poems on some level. I mean, I guess a lot of lyrics are, but when I read them off the page, they're presented almost as little poems, or not little poems, but poems, I suppose. And discrete channeling, this piece of yours,
yes,
I feel like follows some of the conversation we've had. There's a lot of sort of, I'm not sure what I have to call upon my English degrees here, and I don't have them. I don't know the term for this, but you've got basically two words that sync up. You've got these pairs of words: whole incompatible, outside visible, fog radical, outside retention. There is this local disruption. You jack into it every day. I'm just sort of skimming through these lyrics, but I feel like that follows maybe what we were just discussing. The outside is very present on this record.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very present in even our conversations. Just how things are hard to understand. I don't know. Outside in that sense, like a kind of total alterity.
Right.
Yeah, it's also that the outside, just to a big degree. I was going to say to some degree, but that would be an entire different conversation. But to some degree, the outside or l'autre, like the other, like basically makes up who you are and your place in the world, or how you perceive yourself in the world, whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's something that obsesses us, and has been doing, or it has been so for like a good 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you are arguably make outsider art. You exist on the fringes and the margins on some level with the music you make. I mean, there's a whole other relationship with, and I think that's what you were maybe just getting at, like to be outside of the mainstream.
Not necessarily though.
Oh.
I mean, I didn't mean like that we perceive ourselves outside, but that you, at least for myself, like I have an image of myself based on unfortunately what others perceive of me.
Right.
Same thing with like outside art. Like I don't consider that I make outside art, but others do.
Of course.
To me, it's not like I never think that what I do is going to be that experimental or that I don't know how to say it.
Well, it's like with your other project, Avec le Soleil, you were constantly hitting the, like not frustrated, but like you think about that project as a pop project, and everybody constantly tells you like it's experimental music or experimental rock, and you're like, this is not how I perceive it. This is not what I set out to do. And
Yeah.
So that's okay. We've really run the gamut in terms of what outside means at this point. We've talked about talked about the outdoors, we talked about margins, and now we're talking about external perceptions and how they impact you. And it sounds like in a way they do, and in another way they don't. You don't really you're not that mindful of what other people think in terms of how it informs what you do, but you're also a bit bewildered that they think it's one thing when you think it's a totally natural and normal expression. You're not deliberately trying to do something that is going to unsettle people per se.
Well, I could say that we just know that it's going to happen. So we trust the path that we choose to explore, and if we come up with like weird amalgamations, then we just like flow. We go with the flow. It's like we're into the idea that it might be odd for some people, but it's not deliberate. We're not doing it to be odd. It's more like, oh well, if it's odd, then that means that that people are going to interact with it in an interesting way, instead of just like eating something that's prefabricated that they already know how to manage and digest. Like we like the idea of having something that might be a little bit, something they might need to interact with more.
I think there's a context that gets applied to your work together or in your solo work, because you have this association not only with Fly Pan Am but with Constellation Records.
Yes.
With a label that comes out of Montreal, that emerged out of Montreal, that shaped a different kind of Montreal. And it has been doing so for almost 25 years or something now. So automatically, that's a prism that your work is going to be seen through because of that association.
Absolutely.
So is that hard to live down, or do you just work irrespective of all that?
Yeah, I'd say we kind of work irrespective of that. That's my perspective, my perception. I don't know about you, but like I'm not thinking about, it's going to be read through like that.
Yeah, no. I think regarding solo work or band work, I think we just really leave. We just have the idea of wanting to create something interesting to us, and hopefully not repeat what others have done before.
Yeah.
Of course, we're inspired by a lot of people, but we're just trying to not repeat others' work and just try to create something interesting. And I think that's where our thought process for that stops.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I kind of hinted at some of your historical connections. We've talked about Montreal. I just invoked Constellation Records. The band's trajectory, this band, Fly Pan Am, the trajectory is fascinating. It began, it went, you put out records, you stopped, I believe you stopped in 2004, roughly, or 8?
At the end of 2004, yeah.
Yeah, and then you reemerged really in 2018, right?
Yes, publicly, but started working together again, like on a kind of like a regular basis around 2016, sometimes in 2016.
Okay, so I bring this up, and now you're technically, officially, with the release of a new album, you're really back, I guess, is really where that's another external perception. Maybe you've never really went away, but I highlight all of these markers in time because I want to ask you about how this band started and some of those breaks and why we're here again. And I don't ask the last question begrudgingly. I'm happy you're back. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, guys, why are we doing this? Come on.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good question, though.
Let's save that one. Let's save that question. Let's start with JS. JS, can you, and Roger, please feel free to jump in. Let's talk about the origins of Fly Pan Am, how you two maybe met, and how this band came together. And let's start with that. JS, do you mind fielding that?
Well, it'll be a little bit harder for me to give that answer because I came in and Roger and Felix had already started working together.
Was Jonathan also there?
I think Jonathan basically started at the same time as I did.
Okay.
Like we both came to the first time together. Like we met Jonathan and I had met in school. Actually, somehow we all knew each other.
Yeah. Without
knowing that we all knew each other. And I had gone to school with Jonathan, and one day I'm going to rehearse at Roger's and Felix's house, and I see Jonathan outside on the street, and so we walked together. And as we're walking, we realize that we're both going to the same rehearsal. and
Yeah, I
so
remember
that's how we got to be four.
Wait a minute, just a moment. You were both going to the same rehearsal and you didn't realize it?
Yeah, we didn't know. I hadn't seen Jonathan like in over a year, I think, or maybe even two. So yeah, we just met on the street and we're walking the same direction and just, talking and saying like, hey, what are you doing? Where are you going? And we're both talking about the fact that we're going to rehearse and we realize that we're going to the same address.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
Yeah.
And the reason why I was going there is because I met Roger and Felix at where we used to work.
Yeah.
And not telephone company, but anyway, survey company. And
so what year are we talking about here?
1996.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
96, 97, yeah.
You're in your very early 20s?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you end up at this rehearsal.
Yeah, but I mean at that point Roger and Felix I think already you guys had been playing together.
We've been jamming, like at that time I'd been playing guitar for like probably 6 months or something, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but we all really wanted to do, you have to understand, like Montreal at that time, you had Voivod, Men Without Hats, Mitsu, like
right.
The music scene was like really very, barf, blast all rotten fuckers. Like, there was some metal for sure and stuff like that and some punk and hardcore, but there wasn't anything like what we wanted to do. Like we were all listening to like Gaster del Sol and like Bernard Gunter and Stereolab and I don't know, like Drag City stuff, early Drag City stuff. We wanted to make some weird rock music, and there was nothing like that in Montreal. And then we started playing together, and then we heard about Godspeed and Exhaust, and we were like super excited because there was these bands that were kind of like us. They were a bit older, but they were all doing like instrumental, like more like leaning on towards the abstract, like kind of rock, and influenced as much by like sometimes like Exhaust, for example, was influenced by techno and dub and stuff like that, and they had tapes and shit. So it all like made a lot of sense to us to start like exploring, like playing with these guys, and then everything kind of shifted.
I mean, and this is a point in Montreal that it's very much a show bar culture, pay to play culture.
Yes,
and there weren't venues per se to do what you were talking about. You had to, they had to be sort of made. The Hotel Tango, I believe, originally started as a venue, right?
But people were living there too. It was kind of a loft space, and then they decided that to like get bands to play there because they had such a big space.
Yeah, I think it was like I think maybe you're referring to the fact that it was like there was a short-lived period where Morrow and Kiva tried to make like a bar out of it or something out of it.
Cocktail?
Yeah. Very short-lived period.
And the names you referenced there are Morrow and Kiva, who now run the Casa del Popolo and the other one, La Sala Rosa. I almost said Suoni per il Popolo, but I guess they have a hand in that as well.
Yes.
So, but that was very short. I mean, very, very fast. It ended up being like Hotel Tango was the rehearsal space and living quarters for some of them, and studio and a funny thing about that, because it's kind of the same thing as when Jonathan and I met on the street to go to the same rehearsal space. The first time we played Hotel Tango, we called a number that was offering lifts to bands to go play shows. Remember?
No, I don't.
So we called that number, and it was actually Ephraim that was giving lift because they had a moving company. And he was like, so where are you guys going? And we're like, we're going to this loft space at the Hotel called the Hotel Tango. And he was like, oh, this is where I live.
I guess I highlight that just to contextualize what you were up against and what was going on. Yeah. Because this might sound a little like hyperbole, but that was a revolutionary thing that you were a part of in terms of the rise of the bands you mentioned, Godspeed, Exhaust, and the Hotel coming up and Constellation coming up. Yeah. That was really a lot of pushback against the culture at the time in terms of live music culture, right? That can't be understated.
No, definitely. It changed Montreal. Like, like even till now, like it's just Montreal has changed so much. And I would say probably a lot of it is because of that.
I would agree. I mean, that's why there was the various music booms that sent the New York Times to Montreal or whoever. That is the direct result of that kind of work that was done in the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it helped so many bands to flourish, and it gave us a space to rehearse, record, and play. And so you can't really it was so important for us and for so many people at that time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned it to highlight it as well from having not experienced it, but sort of knowing a bit about it. I just wanted to mention that for people who may not be aware. So we've gone on a few tangents. You end up in this rehearsal. How does the aesthetic of Fly Pan Am kind of develop? I know it's an ever-changing, and I hesitate to use the word aesthetic as though it's the sound of the band is any fixed thing.
Oh yeah.
But talk about the evolution of Fly Pan Am in its initial incarnation before you stopped. How would you describe how you approached music making, songwriting together, and whether you actually articulated what you wanted to do together? Roger, do you mind?
Yeah. When we started working on the first record, or early shows and all that, we were just kind of jamming with ideas, and some of these jams would, a good riff would pop out, and we'd start working on that together. Like, we weren't working apart. Nobody was coming in with an idea beforehand, like an actual riff or something, like, not that I remember anyways. Things would kind of take shape in the jam space based on discussions, conversations we'd have outside of the jam space, for sure. Mm-hmm. We were all obsessed with music, a lot of different kinds of music, and we wanted our music to reflect that. And as the band grew and as we kept making records, our tastes changed, our intent changed. Initially, we were interested in doing stuff that would purposefully actually challenge people. So, for example, on the first record, there's a track that's 17 minutes long, and the last 11 minutes of that track is exactly the same thing for 11 minutes, apart from electronics that are sprinkled on top. So It's a very annoying track, and we were interested in that. We were interested in creating defective products, things that didn't really make sense, things that would make people, I don't know how to say that, maybe a bit uncomfortable. That's where we were at the time. I'm not being very clear. It's a long time ago,
Oh, no, that was clear. I mean, I don't know. Can you maybe explain where that impulse to unsettle people comes from?
Yeah, well, for sure, on my end, it came from what I was exposed to artistically. I was a big fan, and still am, a big fan of Jean-Luc Godard, the Situationists. Mm-hmm. Basically, I was trying to bring some of that inspiration into something that was more like rock music. So applying some of the concepts of just, I don't even remember the words that I was using at the time, but just weird, cut up stuff that doesn't make sense, repetitive stuff that's over repetitive, and then you don't lose yourself in it in a kind of comfortable way. You're not just in a trance, you're challenged by it. Just like Godard's movies, you were challenged by their structure, the way he would mix stuff, the cut up aspect of his montage. It was just to make sure that we weren't just doing some complacent aesthetic music. We wanted something that was going to be challenging a bit, but not because we were angry and we wanted to piss people off, more because we wanted it to be fascinating and make them work a bit.
You invoked the word that I was thinking of as you were speaking, which is complacency. JS, can you talk about that in terms of either your or this band's relationship with complacency? It seems to be a force you are opposing in Fly Pan Am. Is that fair?
Oh, I think so. I think because for me it has to do, and I think for others in the band too, it has to do with already being comfortable living life in society with others, and just living. And so then I think this just kind of got transposed to making music as well, and then starting questioning like rules of making music and rules of also
good taste, bad taste.
Yeah, exactly. And which is why we also changed, like from record to record, we don't sound the same. Sometimes our influences are very different from one record to the other. Like the first record is very dry, very artsy. And then by the time you get to Ce qui invente, there's like influences of funk and pop culture in it, like electronic and like I don't know how to call it, like like TLC and groups like that, Destiny's Child. And
you would never hear it, but
yeah, but I mean, like it's stuff that influenced us, like at least the rhythm section, and so there was always like, we also didn't want to be comfortable, and we wanted to push ourselves always to like find new ways of creating music. And also knowing at the time that if we use those influences, we'd be like probably making others question what we were doing, and maybe hopefully their tastes and expectations.
Yeah.
I have found over the years that with any Constellation associated artifact, band, whatever, what have you, I feel like people don't always catch the humor and the sense of fun in play. Did you, Roger, did you experience that? Like what JS is describing in terms of subtle influences, I mean, that comes out in this band sometimes. Those sort of danceable elements. It's like you can be serious, you can be earnest, you can be pushing against the norm and still enjoy yourselves and have fun. But I feel like that gets missed a little bit. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think even for us, to be honest, the first two records, I mean, the first full length and the first EP, and even a little bit of the third one, the one that JS says was kind of influenced by TLC and Alaya and like R&B stuff, sometimes on parts of the record. Those three records for me are a bit austere, and we were taking ourselves very seriously at the time. But with the N'écoutez pas record, we changed. Like, we intentionally wanted to be more, we didn't want to take ourselves seriously anymore, but we still were interested in experimenting and juxtaposing things that don't go together. And not, like JS says, we wanted to surprise and challenge ourselves. So the same intentions were there, but we were trying to be more overtly free, like kind of not just so serious.
I think a little bit had to do with the fact that, when we first started, we wanted to like shock the normies. And then after that, you realize that, because you first see quote unquote normal people as being like very tight and, whatever. And then at one point you realize that you yourself as a experimental artist may be just exactly the same.
Yes.
So then you need to loosen up. And
that's it.
hence comes in TLC, for myself, Destiny's Child, whatever. Like, and I think once we reached N'écoutez pas, we're like, okay, well, we should just like let go of all those all those ideas that are constraints to ourselves.
That's it.
Well, I just as a side note, I want to say, echoing back to that last time we spoke, JS, I mean, that Avec le Sortant, that record is so fun. Like, that record is so enjoyably fun, and there's so many nice, like, grooves on it that I think I was surprised more people didn't gravitate towards it, if I might say. I don't know what that means. I'm not saying I wish it was on MTV or something.
Yeah.
But it just seems super fun to me, and I wish more people... I always talk about that record, actually. Like, just how fun it is and how uplifting it is. I was trying to encourage, this is a long side note, but yeah, I always used to be like to festival bookers, like, just get this band. People are going to lose their minds. It's so fun.
Yeah,
but
they're
again,
good live too.
Yeah, but again, I feel like sometimes that, on Constellation, like, how much fun could it be?
Well, that's something that you would see in reviews. Like, that sometimes in the first few lines, people would say, like, they were almost shocked because they received the copy. They're like, Constellation, so they think it's going to be a sad band. And then they put it on and they're weirded out. I mean, like, positively.
Yeah.
Weirded out because it's dancey and it's like,
It's sort of funny that you've talked about how you want to shake people out of their expectations and complacency, and you've done it both ways. You've done it by being potentially a little discordant, and you've done it by being populist at the same time. It's interesting.
I think that's really what we're aiming for, even with what we're doing now, whether that works or not. Like there's this desire to like have this big contrast.
Yes. I can hear that. It goes. There's noise tracks. There's full-on rock numbers on this new record, and I want to talk about that in a moment, but we should address the fact that Fly Pan Am did stop for a considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
Roger, do you want to address that? Why did the band stop when it did?
Well, we were running into some complications with, like, for example, from what I remember, JS not being as available anymore and kind of not, he just didn't even come on the last tours that we did. And also, I think we had kind of agreed that we had said what we had to say at that time. That was the most important part of it.
Yeah.
So we just stopped.
That was actually the first decision.
That was the first decision?
Yeah, which is what prompted me to like not going on those tours.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because we had decided that we had said what we had to say at the time. We didn't, there was nothing left, or not nothing left for us to explore, but we thought that we had reached the end of what we wanted to do with how we could do it at that time.
Exactly.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like it was particularly fraught, or it sounds like it was an amicable halting?
Reasonably, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody was angry and pissed off at each other. It was more like, let's just move on right now.
Okay,
yeah.
and so
one had other plans, and I had family obligations,
right,
and people were ready to try something else.
Yeah.
So this brings us back. I've been seeing a lot of this myself. The bands I loved maybe 20 years ago and had stopped. Something occurs. I don't think it's simply a economic or financial reason. Something occurs where as men in particular, it seems, get older, they learn how to communicate a bit better, and they learn to get along a little better. There's something kind of odd about, I've noticed it. I can speak as a man who played in bands in his 20s, and how I got along with those people at that point and how I get along with them now. And now it's the same with me and my parents too. I don't know, people think you get softer, but I think you get wiser. I agree. I think you learn how to communicate your feelings a bit better. I would hope. So
it's not a question of becoming softer. No. It's a question of, like, you just said it. Like, you're just wiser. You just understand things with more nuance, and you're not as triggered as easily. And
you value those relationships more too, I think.
Yeah.
So I've loaded up the fact that you've come back in a particular way, and I apologize if I've gone left of the dial, so to speak, here. But what exactly prompted Fly Pan Am to resume in 2016 and play a show in 2018? JS, let's start with you.
Well, in our case, it was really out of curiosity of what we could make as music now. With all the experience that we had gathered individually and with our each other's past 10 years of making music, and being really excited about the mixture that could come out of it. And also the fact that technology now enables us to do things that we just couldn't do before. Where none of us in the band, well, Roger just finished a degree in music, but at that time, none of us were real musicians. We didn't really have any real knowledge of working with computers or anything, but nowadays you can work around that very easily. And so it was a mixture of all that. The fact that now we have technology tools that enables us to go further than what enables us to bring our work further, and also just the experience of everything we've done for the past, since we broke up or since we stopped.
I want to pick up on that experience thing in a moment, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you actually home in on the technology you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the first few years of Fly Pan Am, we mostly relied on 4 tapes. So all our electronics were done
4 tracks.
4 tracks. like we would make our electronics, at home, each other individually, and then we'd have everything on 4 tracks, and then we would write music and find a way to bring both together live.
And the electronic stuff was very rustic, very like not exactly handmade, but not computer based.
Right.
So that was good for the time. It was great, but around
cumbersome by today's standards.
Yes.
Yeah, but also like around N'écoutez pas, like we could feel like the limitations of it.
Yeah, that's it.
Because like sometimes we'd want we wanted the electronics to be more part of the actual song, but we just didn't have the tools or the knowledge to do that.
Yeah.
And but now like things change. Like everyone knows just how far computers have gone now, and the ease of using Ableton Live, and
yeah,
it's everyone that spends time on it will be able to do something that's good. And so it was so exciting to talk about what we used to do, what we've done individually in the past few years, and what we could achieve as a band looking forward with the tools that we have now.
Yeah.
Well,
and so that's really what brought us to think of playing together again.
Yeah.
Roger, did you, beyond the technological advances, when you reconvened, did you have a feeling that we talked about wisdom and we talked about time and its impact on not only people and their dynamics with each other, but I have noticed that when bands get back together, even if you've heard that the guitar player kept playing but the drummer became an accountant, when they get back together, I have discovered they seem better. They seem to be even playing better than they ever did. And I can kind of compare the two. I can be like, wow, when I saw the Jesus Lizard in 1997, it wasn't as good as when I saw them in 2009. Like that's like but that's sort of odd in the rock and roll game. Have you felt in reconvening that people are, and I know this is an odd phrase, but did you feel like people were better in some ways?
I think so, because people they've tried so much stuff.
It's that experience. It's the experience feeding into the band, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
You hone in on what you really are and what you want to explore, and you just get better at that. You're not necessarily just being redundant. It's like you just figure out how to focus more on what your creativity can lead you to explore.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it? I marvel at it myself.
Yeah. No, definitely.
If I stop,
and also another thing that's important is within our band, at least, there's a sense of brotherhood that never really disappeared. It's just maybe for a while we kind of needed some distance.
Yeah.
But that was something that I can speak for myself here. I kind of was missing that. Especially having been making music on my own for like over 10 years, I needed some kind of connection with somebody else, and I was honestly missing the guys.
Yeah. No, the camaraderie is, and that I've used this word on the show a lot. I know it from my own experience. I know it from watching Joe Lally and Brendan Canty play together again in the Aesthetics for the first time in 15 years. That chemistry thing that we talk about should not be undervalued, or it is incredible what people in a room who have that magic between them, they can do almost anything. Whenever you see a band and they've substituted a member, it's very glaring that it's disrupted whatever was magical about them. Not in every case, of course, probably, but I'm very aware of it and how important it is. And I don't know that people really recognize that as much until a band like yours comes back and you're like, yes, this group of people do something so specific to themselves that it's particularly special. I assume that's part of what you're talking about in the camaraderie.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's that. And I was going to bring that point up when Roger was talking, is that there's also the feeling of having spent years of listening to each other's work. Mm-hmm. You feel confident, like you go in a room with 3 other people that you actually really like what they do.
Yeah.
And so you're just really confident. So I think for us, at least, like or myself, I should just talk about myself. Like confidence has always been like a problem. And so it's quite exciting, and it's quite exciting to be in a room and just making music, and things are going well. Like I mean, music wise, like creatively wise.
Yeah,
and it's just fun to be able to like have confidence in each other's capacities.
And I mean, I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you're able to come together. So many relationships like this are lost to bitterness or fighting or irreconcilable differences. It's nice and heartening to hear when a band like yours can come back after ostensibly 15 years apart and not only pick up where you left off but discover new things. Like that's a pretty, I hope you I don't mean to sound dogmatic in any way or whatever, but I hope you feel fortunate about it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So I've sort of clumsily alluded to some of the lyrical motifs on C'est Ça. Is there, in the time we have left, I wonder if there's any overarching thing you want to say about its music or its intent in terms of some of the songs. And I'm asking you to kind of generalize about a whole record. I know that when you make a record and it's out, or it's done, so to speak, at least, you've kind of let go of it. And that's a moment, that time is when you kind of discover things about it that maybe you didn't know. As soon as you hit publish on something, you're like, oh, I just noticed something about this that I didn't when we were making it. So I wonder if you have those moments and what you'd like to impart to people who are about to process it, if you can. Roger, is there something you'd like to tell people about C'est Ça, so to speak?
I don't know. Like, like to me, speaking about the lyrics is pretty difficult because there's some kind of obliqueness to them that's intentional because it's meant to be interpretable.
Who composes the lyrics primarily, or do you all have a hand in that?
Well, on this record, you don't have any lyrics when you're singing, right? No, JS doesn't have any lyrics when he's singing. I'm the other one that sings mostly, apart from JS. JS is the one that screams most of the time.
Oh, he's not improvising words. You're saying he literally just screams.
I use wordless vocals. Just as the same as I do in Le Soleil or solo. I find myself to be a poor writer, so I just let emotions guide through sounds. But yeah, so I don't use words.
They are throat-shredding shrieks, if I might say. Do you have to have a lozenge after?
No, I get used to it.
You get used to it. It's pretty out there. It almost doesn't sound human, if I might say.
Yes, you're right about that.
Yeah. Again, when we were talking earlier about the cacophony, and I think your voice is this perfect amalgam of the wildness of the forest and the creatures and, cars and buzzsaws in the city or whatever you want to call it. It's pretty out there.
Amazing.
That's great. I'll take that any day over just quote unquote black metal vocals, which I need most of the time. And I'm always like, that's not where it's from, but whatever.
Yeah. It's from somewhere. I don't know where it's from, but it's something else, if I might say.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really like that. The links descriptions. That was great.
It kind of does sound like a lynx, like an actual lynx screaming.
We have one in studio, and I just pull on the tail and it sounds.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Roger. Where were you going to go with that?
Yeah. So Jonathan wrote the beginning part of one of the songs, lyric-wise. That's discrete channeling. Yeah. But the rest is all me.
Okay. So you're saying that like I said, I was clumsily trying to describe, I believe I was talking about, no, I wasn't talking about Distance Dealer. I was talking about a different song.
We're talking about discrete channeling.
That's correct. That's right. And I was trying to talk about the word association stuff that was going on there. The
word association stuff is Jonathan.
Right. Okay. So in terms of almost looking at it objectively then, are you seeing themes emerge on this record that surprise you? Or is it too young to figure that out?
To be honest, I'm not surprised by it because for some reason I'm always really focused on what it is I want, and like it always feels like I kind of nailed it. So I'm never surprised afterwards. I'm never going, oh wow, I didn't realize that was there. That's never happened to me with anything.
Okay.
But there is a general theme regarding the lyrics on my end. What I wanted to explore was basically escapist tendencies through virtual worlds.
Yes, there's a song called Interface Our Shattered Dreams that really hammers that home, I would say.
Yeah. It's all like, distance dealer to me is like somebody's, selling you distance from reality. It's
right. Okay, so this is very rich in contemporary life and the
I'm very obsessed with that. Like, the way we're like drugged out of our minds on internet connections and stuff, like whatever escapist routes we take, or it's not, it's not necessarily, I'm not necessarily criticizing it. I'm looking at it. I find it's more complex. It's not black and white.
I mean, at this point, it's like criticizing the sky. I mean, it's just there.
Yeah.
There's not much we can. We've agreed to this.
Yeah,
we've just agreed that this is the way we're going. I work primarily on a university campus, and I don't want to sound like an old man, but it is fascinating to just see people just by themselves looking at their phones. I mean,
yes.
And that's just hordes and hordes of people not talking to each other or walking together in a group of four and each looking at their phones. Like again, it's impossible not to sound like I'm a 90-year-old grandpa, but it is fast. Like you say, I'm almost past being troubled by it. Or even mortified by it. I'm just, at this point, just fascinated. Just like, what does this mean? Where are we going?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate this conversation about your band and this record. I hope you feel like we got to some stuff. What's next for Fly Pan Am? Will you be playing shows?
Yeah, we're playing, we're doing a small Ontario tour in a few weeks. We're actually playing Guelph.
Nice.
And we're playing, I think, like 7 dates? The launch is in Montreal. We're launching the record in Montreal on the 20th, and then we're like heading into Ontario until the 28th.
So I'm looking to see when we're playing Guelph on the 27th of September, Friday the 27th at Silence Sounds.
Oh, okay.
And then we're going to be we've been working with them a bit already, but we're working with a dance company called Animals of Distinction, and we're providing the soundtrack to the next piece. We're going to be presenting that stuff in Quebec in November, and then in Montreal at Place des Arts in December. And then we're going to be touring that stuff eventually and touring as a band on our own in Europe in 2020.
So Fly Pan Am is definitely back.
Yeah.
No doubt. You're full force back. It sounds like this is a real commitment.
Yeah, we're already thinking about the next record.
Oh, amazing. That's great.
Yeah. It'll be different.
Yes. Or change.
I'm sure it might be. Yeah, I can see that happening. For people who want to learn more about Fly Pan Am, and C'est ça, I assume CSTRecords.com is a good place to go. Anywhere else?
Definitely. Also, our Facebook page.
Are you on the other things? Twitter, Instagram?
Yeah, we're on Twitter too.
And on Bandcamp, I guess.
Bandcamp is where they can pick up the record as well. Okay, cool.
If we're on Bandcamp, it's through Constellation. I have to admit, I don't know anything about that.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering if we can go out on a song from C'est ça, and if so, I wonder if one of you, I don't want to pick which one of you picks, because that would be maybe overstepping my bounds. But if you, between the two of you, can suggest a song we can go out on so people can check it out, that would be great. Would you mind doing so?
Yeah.
Sure. I'm horrible at deciding, so I'm going to let Roger do that. Je peux juste suggérer Cocteau, mais...
Yeah, let's go with that one. Let's go with the one you mentioned earlier, Interface Our Shattered Dreams.
I just want to point out that saying you're indecisive is a pretty decisive thing to say.
Yeah, I own it now.
You owned it, like right away. You made a decision that you couldn't decide. That was it's sort of contradictory stuff going on there, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a strength now.
This is Interface Your Shattered Dreams by Fly Pan Am from their excellent new record, C'est Ça. JS, Roger, this was a pleasure for me. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and best of luck in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot to you.
Resolution
Very special thanks to Roger and JS from Fly Pan Am for appearing on this, the 499th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available on all iOS and Android platforms, and also on other things, lots of other things, all of the other things, Spotify, YouTube, Audio Boom. It's everywhere you want to be. If you can't find an episode that you're looking for, or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my semi-regularly scheduled newsletter, it's not as regular as I would like, please visit my website, vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow the show on Twitter at Vish Creative, or follow me directly at Vishkhanna. You can listen to a radio show version of Creative Control on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time around the world at CFRU.ca, or on an actual radio at 93.3 FM if you're in or near Guelph. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to keep this podcast going. I've just added a $6 tier, and anyone who pledges $6 or more to the show on Patreon will have access to exclusive audio content that I will be publishing at least twice a month, drawing from my personal archive of interviews with really awesome people from the past, at least that I've interviewed in the past. There's some hope most of them are still around, but I digress. Anyway, go to patreon.com/Creative Control and you can learn more about that tier. Thanks again to Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton for their in-kind support for this show. Thanks as always to Jim Guthrie. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org, and if you like the music that's playing behind me right now, that's Jim. jimguthrie.org to learn more about him. And finally, thanks for listening to this episode and for subscribing to the show and checking out other episodes and maybe telling a friend to do the same and spreading the word about the show. It means a lot. And yeah, episode 500. We're almost there, and that'll be coming out soon. So thank you for listening to all 499 episodes of this show. Most of them were okay, I hope. And there's more to come. So thanks again. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.